if I'm someone that's been through an emergency or a natural disaster, and I think I might be struggling, but I'm not sure. How do I know? What are the sorts of things that I can keep a lookout for? Maybe what would the signs be that might be telling me I should perhaps go and see and talk to a health professional, or maybe use some sort of other resource or support?
I think it's such an important question, because what we've got to remember is, particularly in any sort of emergency, it kind of just affects people in their lives wherever they are. And we should assume that most of the people who are going to be significantly affected have never had to consult a mental health worker or a counsellor or anyone like that. They've just managed their lives, because that's what most people do. So there's some very important things, I think, for people to think about here. The first is that are you able, if you were to come to me and ask that question, I'd say, well, how are you going with all the things you have to do? Because what we notice is that one of the most common, in fact, the most common health effect is a whole range of rather minor, irritating, what we call psychosomatic complaints. Complaints in our bodies that have to do with our stressed state of mind. Skin conditions, digestive problems, sleeplessness, muscular pains, you name it. Any part of the body can be affected. And so one of the first things I would say is, if you have been through a trauma or an emergency of any sort, go and see your health professional and check in with them regularly, like monthly to begin with. Because the essence of stress is to narrow and focus me onto my problem, and I lose self-awareness. And therefore I'm not actually using my understanding to take care of myself. I'm just dealing with my problem. And I'm going to run out of steam. So to see our GP and say, and they ask us questions like, how you're sleeping, what's your diet, can I measure your blood pressure, and so on. It's very important to help me think, well, actually, no, I'm not sleeping, and then do something about it.
So one of the things I should do, sort of regardless of how I think I am, is just check in with my doctor and have a general health checkup. So, maybe similar to what I do with my car, I take it to the mechanic every, so many kilometres, and it gets serviced. So I guess what you're saying is I shouldn't ignore how many Ks the car has done and just bypass the mechanic. I should just make sure I get to the GP and get that health checkup, because that'll help me understand where I'm at.
Because your best resource for recovery is your own health, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's the stress effects that have a generalised cost on our body, but that also translates into the effect of stress on our brains, which is this narrowing and focusing onto just plodding through this tremendous load of work, this endurance mode. I think of that as like zombie mode. We all know what it's like. You've got a huge amount of work you just plod through, you don't think about yourself, but you then find yourself in a state of mind where you can't do the complicated things. In that zombie mode, we can't do forward planning. We can't do strategic thinking. What's the most important thing? It's very hard to prioritise. We've got to hold a whole lot of things there and juggle them and think, which is the most important? What's the sequence? And one of the signs that you're in this state of ongoing stress is your ability to organise yourself deteriorates. And that often shows up with memory. You go down to the bedroom and I can't remember why I came. And I walk back to my desk and then I realise I need my glasses and I can't find them in the bedroom. Eventually I happen to walk past the mirror and they're actually on the top of my head.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's just stress response.
Yeah.
And people get into a state where two really dominant things show up. The first is dithering. I muck around and I just get confused and I do three things at once and don't achieve it. And the other is procrastinating. I've got really important things to do, phone calls, plans, and I just can't face it. I'm going to do it tomorrow and the next day. And this makes recovery really protracted because I'm not getting my mind into a state where I can use it. And that's where I think it's very helpful that if a person's in this state, they talk about their state. Now, if they've got good friends and family or community members and they can compare notes, it's the ability to take stock of myself, which is very hard to do in our own mind by ourselves, but we can do it in a conversation with someone we trust. But often, I would say, if a person has a sense that their recovery is stalled in any way, it's not progressing, there'll be a reason for that. And that's where to sit down with someone who's got the training to just unpack it and pick out, oh, this is what's holding you up, and give you a few strategies. Okay. And we know that with trauma, if the person's got the experiences coming back again and again, or if they're in this constant state of being wired, anxious, jumping at shadows and so on, that's when we know that the earlier you get onto it with someone, again, with the training, to give you the strategies to start interrupting that cycle of perpetuating it, you'll get the recovery moving.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess what I'm hearing come through there is, a good starting point is to check in with your GP, get a general health checkup. Secondly, that if you've got things occurring like memory loss, or you're dithering or procrastinating or can't organise yourself, they don't in and of themselves mean you need to go and talk to a psychologist. I mean, just a good starting point is talk to your family and friends. Yes. Draw on the supports around you. But then thirdly, there could be other things occurring, like you can't get pictures out of your mind of your survival experiences on the day, or you might not be able to get to work and function there. You can't get out of bed. You're feeling so low and flat and unmotivated. Things like that would be signs that it's probably time to check in with a health professional. And then on top of that, I think you've mentioned, especially if your recovery has completely stalled, then that's a pretty big sign as well.
So you could say other signals is if you're just really hurting, or you think you're damn well all right, but everyone else is complaining about you.
Yeah, that's a big
just
one.
Leave me alone. I've got all this work to just shut up and get out of my way. But you're getting this feedback about yourself, or you have a sense that your relationships are deteriorating, or the kids sort of saying, Dad, why are you always bad-tempered?
Yeah.
This can be a real wake-up call. Yeah. It's that reflection. And it's often so valuable to just compare notes with other people who are going through the same thing. Whether you're in the community or whether you get involved in a sort of meetings with other people who've been involved in the same sort of thing. Because that's when we actually see ourselves and start to counteract the stress responses that are sort of essential to losing self-awareness.
Yeah, so just really do stop and take notice of what people around you might be telling you about yourself. That could be a sign too.
One of the things that I think is a very important warning signal is when people have lost their routines, because we form routines in normal life around what's important to us. We go for a walk, however often, because we know it's good for our health, and in time we will meet people and maybe have a coffee with somebody, or it'll become a self-perpetuating thing that we enjoy. When we're in that stress mode, we haven't got time for enjoyment. We've got stuff to do. It's much more important. And so we get a lifestyle that starts to rebuild itself and rebuild the routines around this sense of, I've got this sprint I have to do, that I have to get all this done. Actually, it so often happens that people don't last. Something gives. They have a health crisis, their relationship breaks down or something like that. These are unnecessary things. We must just do it slower and steadier, and that's where the pace of other people helps normalise what we need to do.
Yeah, some great advice, Rob. Yeah.
There's just one other thing that I'd like to emphasise is we know from all science of brains and what we understand now, but we also understand that it's absolutely essential for us to have leisure time. Leisure is not working, not having anything to do. I can just do what I like. That's when I think it's so important in relationships to have time with each other where you don't have to do anything except just hang out together. Hang out with the kids and just give your full attention to them regularly.
Yeah.
And build these into routines. Now that feels like a waste of time from the point of view of all the things I have to do. But it's that leisure that allows us to get access to those really important mental skills. I can tell you the story of a man in a bushfire community who had a small business that was badly affected. And he told me that after he heard me give a talk to that community about these issues, he realised that when I talked about dithering and procrastinating, he recognised that's me. I'm not getting anything done. So he took his family to Bali for 3 weeks, which was a pretty big interruption. He said, when I got back, I did more in 3 days than I'd done in 3 weeks before I went. And this is absolutely a reliable thing, that the essence of self-care is around pleasure, enjoyment, satisfaction on the one hand, doing things that I feel an achievement, and leisure, just having time out, just chilling out. If those things aren't working or I'm too unhappy to do that, then I should see someone with training. And that could be a psychologist, a counsellor, a social worker, it could be a GP. There are usually all sorts of programs to make mental health people available. And do it earlier rather than later. And then it's preventive care rather than having to fix up a whole lot of additional problems.
Yeah, absolutely.